Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Michelle Sear, Senior Associate Dean for Academic Affairs for Biology and Medicine, and I want to welcome you to today's promotion workshop for clinical and clinician educator faculty. Before we dive into the program, I'd like to introduce Megan Flanagan from our Continuing Medical Education Office, and Megan's going to show us a slide to get us going. Actually, a video, sorry about that.
Good evening. Thank you for joining the BMFA Clinical Faculty Promotions Workshop. This activity is provided by the Warren Alpert Medical School of Brown University and is certified to offer AMA PRA Category 1 credit. Displayed here are the learning objectives for tonight's session, as well as a disclaimer and the privacy policy of the Brown Office of CME. Shortly after the session ends, you'll receive an email with the link to complete an evaluation. We encourage you to take a moment to provide feedback as it helps us in future planning. Once the eval is complete, you'll be able to claim credit and a CME certificate will be made available immediately. Thank you so much. It's my pleasure to turn it over.
Thanks so much, Megan. And once again, I'm Senior Associate Dean for Academic Affairs, Michelle Sear, and I do want to welcome you to today's workshop. Thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy schedules to do this. As Senior Associate Dean for Academic Affairs, I oversee a number of offices, one of which is Biomed Faculty Administration. That office supports the over 2,000 faculty in the Division of Biology and Medicine. And through that office, we facilitate the recruitment, the appointment, the retention, the promotion of faculty members across the 4 basic science biology departments, the 14 clinical departments, and 2 hybrid departments. And one of the ways in which we support faculty is through informational programs such as this. Similar to past years, in fact, we've been doing this now for 3 years, we've divided the workshop into 2 separate workshops to really address the specific needs of our 2 major groups of faculty. This promotion workshop today is for the clinical tracks faculty, the clinician educators and clinical faculty. And then we have another academic tracks faculty promotion workshop for teaching scholar, research scholar, and Perens research track faculty. And that will be held on November 29th. So before we really get started, I'd like to thank and recognize all of the groups that have made this workshop possible, especially the Office of Biomed Faculty Administration, and specifically Heather Robichaux, who did yeoman's work to get this program off the ground. I'd also like to thank our Office of Continuing Medical Education for supporting the program. The panelists and our session presenters have really been very generous in donating their time, their wisdom, and their expertise to make this a really valuable experience for everyone. I'd also like to thank the Clinical Faculty Advisory Committee, CFAC, for co-sponsoring this workshop. And now I would like to introduce Dr. Philip Salko, Clinical Assistant Professor of Family Medicine and Clinical Assistant Professor of Orthopedics, who's the chair of CFAC. And Phil's going to talk about the mission of CFAC and how it works to support our clinical faculty.
Thank you for that. And once again, also thank you, Heather, for all the hard work that you do all the time. You make my job and being on this committee so pleasant and so appreciative. Yes, good afternoon, everyone. Once again, my name is Philip Salko. I'm the chair of the Clinical Faculty Advisory Committee, also known as CFAC, not MFAC, CFAC. Our mission is to represent the clinical and clinician educator track faculty and to acknowledge and promote their essential role in the success of the academic educational enterprise at the Warren Alpert Medical School of Brown University. Think about how hard so many different faculty members work, teaching, spending time with students, all different things that don't necessarily feel like they're a part of the medical school, but they are. And our committee is the committee that sort of oversees a lot of that communication. Our responsibility is ensuring effective communication from all the clinical faculty and successful collaboration of the medical school and its clinical faculty in pursuit of all of our educational missions. The Clinical Faculty Advisory Committee, once again, CFAC, is a very diverse group of physicians who serve as representatives of clinical faculty. And there's all kinds of issues that come up all the time, good and challenging, that are very important to the medical school administration. And we're there to connect clinical faculty and the administration. Thank you. And now we're kind of back.
Okay, thanks so much, Bill, and thank you so much for your work and the committee's work in supporting the clinical faculty. It's really
Appreciate it.
important. So before I begin our PowerPoint presentation, let me start with some logistics. The first hour of the workshop is going to be recorded, and that will be available later for viewing. Not that any of you may need to view that, but it will be available on our website if anybody has any questions about promotions. The breakout groups will not be recorded, and that's meant to be, allow you to really ask specific questions about your circumstances in the breakout sessions, that one of which will be devoted to the clinical track faculty and one for the clinician educator faculty. As we proceed through the PowerPoint presentation and during the panel, please submit your questions via the chat function to Vilma Cortez just saying. And so specifically address your questions to Vilma in the chat function, and then Vilma will repeat those questions, and we'll be able to allow panelists to answer them as we do the Q&A. We'll start the program with a general overview of the promotions process, and that will be then followed by a panel discussion. Again, you'll have ample opportunity at that time to ask questions. And then we'll have you go into breakout sessions. If you have any uncertainty about what breakout session you should be in, the staff from Biomed Faculty Administration can assist you if you just stay on the Zoom, and they'll put you into a breakout room. We found that sometimes people don't know what breakout session they should attend, so our staff can look up your name and find out what track you're currently appointed in. So now I would like to share my screen, and this is where I always have a challenge, but wish me luck. How's that? Okay, I think I did it. Great. So again, the goals of this workshop are to provide you with some basic information about the faculty tracks, the promotion dossier, the promotion process, and timeline. We hope that we'll be able to dispel some myths, and there are always some myths about the promotion process, standards and criteria, and so we'll work hard to dispel those myths and misunderstandings. Our panelists will share some promotion tips, as will our breakout group facilitators, and throughout the panel and the breakout sessions, we'll be available to answer any questions that you have. So again, we're going to be focusing on the two clinical tracks, the clinical track and the clinician educator track. And this slide shows the titling for the two tracks. For clinical track, it's clinical professor of Department X. And for clinician educator, it's professor of Department X, clinician educator. This pie chart depicts the numbers of faculty we have in our 5 clinical department tracks. So we have over 2,000 faculty, and you can see that the vast majority of the faculty are in the clinical track, with over 1,000 faculty members in that track, followed by the clinician educator with over 700 tracks, and then the remaining tracks are represented here. Pre-track is the track that faculty enter when they're initially appointed, and they have not yet differentiated into a research scholar or teaching scholar track. So in essence, we have 6 tracks, but ultimately people are promoted into 5 tracks. So if you look at this slide, then you can easily see that over 3/4 of our faculty are in clinical tracks. So you all represent a very, very important part of our faculty body. So now we're going to move on to faculty track standards and criteria. So these are the requirements for appointment and promotions into the various faculty tracks. This slide is a little bit busy, but it has a lot of very important information. And I should mention that it is on the Biomed Faculty Administration website if you want to spend more time with it. So this slide is representing the associate professor rank. And across the top are our 5 clinical department tracks. And then in the far left column are the requirements or criteria for each of those tracks. So we're going to focus again on the clinical track and the clinician educator track. The key below shows what the various cells, the letters in the cells mean. And you can see we have required, positively considered, not required, peer reviewed, and then also the requirement that for the clinical track that individuals provide a minimum of 100 hours of teaching errand or service, and the clinician educator track, it's 200 hours. So as we go across the two tracks, you can see that research is not required for either track, so there's no surprise there. Scholarly productivity, oh, I'm sorry, I went forward, and this has happened before. So scholarly productivity is positively considered for the clinical track, the associate professor rank, and it is required at the associate rank for the clinician educator track. So that's a little bit of a difference between the two tracks. Both tracks require a regional reputation. There's no requirement for educational leadership. There is a requirement for teaching, mentoring, and advisory excellence. And there's also a requirement for clinical contributions. So in essence, the two tracks have very, very similar requirements, except for the requirement for scholarly productivity and publications. So this is the track, this is the slide representing the professor rank. And again, you can see the two tracks that we're focusing on. And in this slide, you can easily see that both tracks have essentially the same requirements. Oops, I did it again. Sorry about that. Both tracks require scholarly productivity at the professorial rank, and they both require a national reputation. I must say that when we review candidates coming up through the clinician educator track, that because there was a requirement for scholarly productivity at the associate professor rank, the expectation is that productivity continues. Whereas for the clinical track professor promotion, it is anticipated that the individual may not have had much scholarly productivity prior to coming up for promotion to full professor. This is just another way of looking at the criteria for an individual track here, the clinical track, across the associate and professor ranks. And what you can see here is where the row is not divided, that the requirement stays essentially the same from associate to full professor. And where it is divided here under scholarship, it changes from associate to full professor. So again, scholarship is not required at associate professor, but it is required at full professor. And then clinician educator, same sort of format. And you can see that the reputation goes from a regional reputation to a national reputation in the area of expertise for a promotion to full professor. So again, this is just another way of looking at the same criteria for each of the two tracks. There is a new criterion that is going to be implemented fully July 1st of 2024. And this was a recommendation by a working group that I put together in 2021. And that working group made the recommendation that we include a requirement for a demonstrated commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion for all faculty tracks and all ranks. And so, as I said, that will be fully effective July 1st, but faculty are very much encouraged to include these activities prior to that date. And what we've been seeing is most faculty are doing that well in advance of the full implementation date. There are metrics that we have on our Biomed faculty administration site that include a number of examples of DEI activities in various areas of focus that you might consider including in your promotion dossier. So now let's move on to the promotion dossier. And it often feels like the components are this tall in paper. The good news is that we don't have paper dossiers anymore, that we're fully electronic. So this slide is somewhat antiquated, but it does feel like there are certainly a lot of pieces of it. So let's look at what the various pieces are and who's responsible. So on the left side, you can see here, this is what you, again, it does it. You, the candidate, are responsible for in the promotion dossier. You're responsible for updating your CV, for a personal statement, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. Your teaching hours, if you're a clinician, educator, or clinical, your evaluations, and a list of suggested referees. The department is responsible for a chair and chief letter of support, the department promotions committee report, a sample letter that is sent out to referees when they solicit those letters of recommendation, the actual referee letters, and there are referee letters that come from a list that the department compiles and those that you provided as a candidate. And then once again, evaluations. So one of the major components of your dossier is your curriculum vitae. And these are just some tips that we've accumulated over the years in terms of how you can make your CV the best it can possibly be. What is non-negotiable is that you have to use the Brown format. That's easily found on the Biomed Faculty Administration website, and that really is very, very important for you to use. It is a very high-level format, and you can certainly have more specificity within it, but the general format needs to be followed. The overarching message I'd like to leave you with is that when you think about doing your CV, think about doing everything you can do to make the reviewer's job easier. A happy reviewer is going to be more positive about your promotion. So do everything that makes it really easy for them to look at your CV to assess whether you meet the criteria. You should consider highlighting your name on publications. That really helps them know where you are in the author list. If you do have grants, include the grant agency, your role on the grant, and the dollar amount. Separate your presentations into local, regional, national, and international. And this isn't just for the reviewer, it's also for you. So you get credit for presentations that may occur in Providence, but actually are national or international conferences. So you don't want to just say that it happened in Providence, Rhode Island, if it was a national conference. So certainly separate those presentations into these categories. Organize your professional organizations, activities with the listing of your role. That gives the reviewers a really good idea of how you've moved through the organization and how you've achieved regional and national reputation. Get feedback from colleagues, certainly from your division chief, your department chair, the promotion committee chair. They will be looking at your CV, and you can ask them for feedback well in advance of going up for CV. And I think it's a great idea. If you have a faculty member colleague who was recently promoted, ask them if you can look at their CV, because they may have organized it in a way that makes sense for you. Again, using the Brown format generally, but within that format, they may have categories that can really help demonstrate your work. And I'd also, a number of years ago, we abandoned the teaching portfolio requirement for some of the tracks. But I do encourage that you make sure that you include all of your teaching work, roles that you do. So record all of the teaching, advising, and mentoring activities and the titles. List any advisees and mentees that you've had. Indicate the role that you've had in any course or rotation. The dates, numbers of, and types of learners. So if you're teaching medical students or residents or fellows, make sure you indicate that. Certainly include all awards that you've received for teaching, mentoring, and advising. Include your evaluations for classes, lectures, presentations, any scholarship that's resulted from your teaching, advising, and/or mentoring. A number of faculty actually highlight the names of their advisees or their students, mentees in the author list of anything that they've authored with them. And then be sure to include any curriculum that you've developed, because this counts towards scholarship. So in terms of the teaching, mentoring, and advising requirement, evaluations are the way that we determine whether you have excellence in this area. So keep a file of all your evaluations. Most evaluations now are in electronic systems. So for students, it's the OASIS system. For GME, it's either New Innovations or eValue. Include any evaluations that you've had from invited presentations or advisees and mentees. A number of times, if you've done an invited presentation, you may get feedback from the course director or the conference director, and that can be really helpful in demonstrating your teaching excellence. Ask program administrators for help. Sometimes it's hard to retrieve evaluations, so go to the program administrators, program coordinators for the clerkships, residencies, fellowships, and the CME office. Now, we've already said that research is not a requirement for the clinical or clinician educator track, but certainly if you have done research, be sure to include your original publications that have come from that research. Include all of the research grants, and the specifics about those grants is listed here, and then any research trainees with whom you've worked. Referee letters are, again, a very important part of your dossier and a way in which reviewers determine if you have a regional or national reputation. The referee letter purpose is to really provide an objective and unbiased assessment regarding your reputation in the field. They must be at your promotion rank or higher. The referees might not know you specifically, but they are provided with your dossier, and so they have an opportunity to review that, to comment on whether and how you meet the various criteria. On the Biomed Faculty Administration website, there's more specificity about how many letters you need and whether they can be internal or they need to be external. All letters need to be outside of your home department, but at some ranks, in some cases, you can receive internal letters from other department members. The personal statement is, again, another important part of your dossier, and it can really provide more information than a reviewer might glean from your CV, from the department letter. So it's an opportunity to tell the story of your career path, and I like to think of it as a biographical essay. Keep it brief, no more than 2 pages, and that doesn't mean, decrease the font so it's impossible for anyone with presbyopia to read. So keep it to 2 pages. Explain what might not be clear from your CV. Help the reader understand who you are, what you do, what gives you joy in your job, and with that, always remember your track. So if you're on a clinician educator track, it probably would not make sense for you to talk about how passionate you are about bench research and never mention being a clinician and an educator. So do remember what track you're on when you talk about what you're doing and your goals for the future, and do present your goals and your aspirations, because that cannot be gleaned from the rest of your CV. And again, like real estate, location, 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 remember your track. Okay. So sometimes it feels like the slide goes too fast. Sometimes it feels like the promotion timeline takes too long. But I like to liken it to making sourdough bread, if any of you did that during the pandemic. There's a very small amount of active time in the whole process and a lot of inactive time where you're waiting for the dough to rise and rest. So it's not a lot of actual active work that you need to do, but it can take a long time. So the steps in the promotion process are, the first step is the candidate and either the division chief or department chair decide if it's the right time for promotion. And often it's the division chief during an annual review. The candidate confirms the track that they're on, and they're informed of the departmental deadlines and the need for various promotion documents. There is usually a preliminary departmental review, and that happens most often in the promotion committee. And then the promotion committee department chair informs you as the candidate about going forward for the promotion. So they give you the green light. At that point, the department solicits the referee letters that have been approved for the candidate, and the department promotion committee reviews once they get those referee letters, and I must say that that's the thing that takes probably the most time, is getting those referee letters. So that's the inactive dough rising, resting period of time. Once those reviews are in, the promotion committee reviews the entire dossier and then recommends the candidate to the chair of the department. The chair of the department then gives the green light, and the department submits the completed dossier to the Committee on Medical Faculty Appointments and Promotions. The CMFA reviews the dossiers and then votes on the promotions. So what is this Committee on Medical Faculty Appointments and Promotions? It is an 8-member committee. All of the members need to be full professors in the medical academic tracks or a campus-based tenure track. And they're appointed to the committee for 3-year terms. There are 5 members from the medical academic faculty in the clinical departments. There's 1 member from biology, and there's 1 member from public health, and 1 member from another university department. And right now, the committee has a campus-based faculty member, non-biology, who's from chemistry. So just think about the diversity of the committee and the people who will be looking at your dossier. They review all the senior level promotions and appointments in the clinical departments. We meet throughout the academic year. We don't meet during the summer because a number of campus-based faculty actually go hither and yon during the summer for their research. So we don't meet during the summer, but we meet every 2 weeks during the academic years. All the members of the committee read your full dossier, and they formulate questions for the department chair, who presents your dossier and answers any questions and makes clarifications. So at that point, once the Department Promotion Committee chair is recommended to CMFA, CMFA is voted. I then have a conversation with the chair of the department to inform them of the vote, and that's the point at which the chair can tell you that the vote was approved or not approved, which is not a usual circumstance, but they can inform you at that time, noting that it then will need to go to the Dean of Biology and Medicine, the Provost, the President, and the corporation. But the point at which the president approves the promotion, you would receive a letter from Biomed Faculty Administration telling you that pending approval by the corporation on July 1st, that you are promoted. Yay. So the next segment of this workshop is going to be a panel discussion, and these are our panelists, and I'm going to have them introduce themselves when we move on to that segment. And then, as I said before, at the end of the workshop, we'll be having the breakout session. So it should be, or we'll have about an hour of breakout sessions, and they will not be recorded. You will be prompted to self-select your track for the breakout session. But if you have any questions, which one you should attend, as I said before, please stay in the main Zoom room, and one of the biomed staff will assist you. I hope that you've been putting questions as they've arisen into the chat and continue to do so as we move on to the panel. Stay tuned, because this video will be available at the BMFA website, and certainly you can review any part that wasn't clear to you. The slides, the PowerPoint slides, will also be available on the BMFA website to review as well. So now I am going to stop my screen share. And all right. So I think Heather is going to pin our panelists. And they are Susan Duffy. Let's see. I see Susan. There.
Yeah, I'm here. Do you want me to introduce myself?
No, not wait 1 second. I'm just going to make sure I see everybody. Alex Kelleher. Hi, Alex. Deborah Myers. Let's see. Is Deb there?
Oh, Deb is not doing it today.
Oh, okay. All right. Tracy O'Leary Tevya. Tracy, I see you. Great. So are we good, Heather?
I'm just adding the last pin, and I think we're good. I just need to add Susan Duffy. There we go.
Great.
I'm joining as well.
Oh, Karen, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
you know what? Did I have the wrong list? Thank you, Karen.
I have Dr. Tashima, Dr. O'Leary Tevua, and Dr. Duffy.
You know what? I had an old list. Okay. So thank you, panelists, for joining us. I am going to have you each introduce yourselves, and then, yeah, first of all, I'll have you each introduce yourself. So, and please tell us how you interact with the whole promotion process. So, Alex Kelleher, you're closest to me. I'm going to have you introduce yourself.
Great, thank you. I'm Alex Kelleher. I'm the director in Biomed Faculty Administration. So I work very closely with the biomed staff, and given that we're the ones who kind of oversee the logistics and all the pieces that go into the final promotion and appointment dossiers that come our way, I'm very involved in reviewing dossiers and teaming with others in BMFA to help support the CMFA, the Committee on Faculty Appointments and Promotions.
Thank you. Tracy, you are next on my screen.
Hey, hello. I'm Tracy O'Leary Tevua. I am a clinical professor in the Department of Psychiatry and Human Behavior. I'm the chief psychologist at the Providence VA Medical Center, and I am the Department Promotions Committee chair for the Clinical Faculty Appointments, Reappointments, and Promotions Committee for the Department of Psychiatry and Human Behavior. So in my role as chair, we have quarterly meetings where we review the appointments, reappointments, and promotions for all interested and faculty in our department. And that's approximately 50 to 60 individuals per meeting. So, and I personally review every single one of those. So in my role, we ensure that our faculty are being appropriately promoted and appointed. And additionally, as part of our work, we ensure that our faculty are supported by their service chiefs at the medical centers or their faculty liaison if they're part of the community in private practice, in terms of knowing the promotion process, getting regular and consistent feedback about how things are going, and really setting people up for success when it comes to promotion, which is very pleasurable part of our job. So so thank you for having me.
Thank you, Tracy. And next on my screen is Susan Duffy.
Thank you. I'm Susan Duffy. I am the Vice Chair of Academic Affairs for Emergency Medicine, which has 110 faculty, and probably 60% are in the clinical educator, clinical track, maybe even a little bit more. I'm also a member of the CMFA, which has been an incredibly enlightening and wonderful experience to get to see all of the rich faculty in this university. I'm also the head of our promotion committee in emergency medicine. And so I would say that my job is really to help our faculty craft their path because it really is a path going from the instructor or assistant level to the professor level, and it's a trajectory, and helping people really articulate the things that they do in a way so that we get credit for it as promotion. And it's really wonderful getting to work with our faculty and see how people progress. And I'm on the academic track, I'm a teaching scholar, but I have to say early in my career, I had no idea what was the difference. I had no idea what were the criteria, and I had no idea how to do it. So it really was a really learning pathway. And so it's really wonderful to take advantage and learn the path along the way as you go.
Thanks, Susan. And then finally, Karen Tashima.
Thank you. So I'm Karen Tashima. I'm in the Division of Infectious Diseases in the Department of Medicine. I'm Vice Chair for Faculty Affairs in the Department of Medicine and Promotions Chair for the Department of Medicine. Similar to what Susan said, I'm very excited to meet people and talk about their CVs and see how we can make sure that they're putting things on their CV in a way that really highlights their achievements and meet the criteria for promotions. So I do like to meet people along the path. So meeting early and several times during their couple of before they need to go up for promotion can be very helpful. And then recently I attended Shelley's promotions event, which was wonderful to have this nice event where people got together and who had been promoted this past year and just celebrate their achievements. So that was very nice. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Karen. Yeah, we had a lovely reception a couple of weeks ago for promoted faculty, and President Paxson and Dean Jane both spoke briefly and stayed to congratulate everybody, and it really was a very, very nice event. And I have to say, before we actually dive into the questions, the work that our departments do to support faculty through the promotion process is really nothing short of amazing. That they make it so much easier when the candidates come before the Committee on Medical Faculty appointments and promotions, because so much of it has been handled at the departmental level, and everybody is really geared to supporting you and to making sure that you do get promoted. So it's not by any means, nobody is doing this to be a gatekeeper and prevent you from promotion. Everybody is working at the department and at the CMFA level to really get you through the process and have you get recognized and rewarded for all the important work you do. So with that, I am going to ask our panelists to share, maybe just before we get to the participants Q&A, share one tip, like your favorite tip that you give to faculty over and over again as they navigate the promotion process, or even before they start to really navigate it. So I'm going to start with you, Karen, if that's okay.
Sure. I think one of the important things is to have a colleague who's been recently promoted review your CV. I think it's really helpful because it's somebody who knows you and knows what you are doing that can say, hey, what about those 5 things that you did? And I know all about it. And why didn't you put it on your CV? So I think that's very helpful. And having an example of somebody's CV is also really helpful. Like what goes on the CV, and is this appropriate? Is that appropriate? How do we put it on there? So
great tip. Absolutely. Susan.
I think 2 of the tips that I give out more often than not is scholarship has got a broad definition, and get credit for what you do, and scholarship can mean blogs, it can mean curriculum, it can mean anything that goes potentially online. It's not necessarily peer reviewed, but also be methodical and do it one step at a time. Producing 1 or 2 things a year within a 7-year period will get you promoted easily. And then the other thing I would say is join early. Join national committees, local committees, get involved early, even if you don't have the bandwidth. So early in our careers, we're concentrated on clinical work and think, oh, I don't have the bandwidth to do this. But just join and show up, because out of there will come collaborative projects and opportunities to get involved. And then later on, when you have more bandwidth and you really want to take a role, you're already there. So those are my big advice.
Great advice. Tracy.
Well, one of the factors that is, required for both promotion to associate and full professor in both of these tracks is teaching, mentoring, advising excellence, really essentially supervision, right, of our trainees. And I do know that when people are up for promotion, things go, I think, much more smoothly when their teaching evaluations, really reflect how amazing and outstanding they are when it comes to supervising and teaching and mentoring, which means that spending time, really working on that, and also importantly, making sure that your supervisees, your trainees, your students provide you with that feedback, encourage them to give you feedback, encourage them to write that down in the narratives. I know it's extra work, but it can go a really long way. And those are the kinds of things that that really sing when it comes to putting together your dossier. When external reviewers and referees see that, it's very clear you really believe in that mission. And so the extent to which you spend time with your supervisees, trainees, students, and getting their feedback so it can be part of your evaluations, I think it goes a really long way. And it also is just so rewarding when you see positive feedback. So that's the one thing I would say.
Yeah, and it's so true that in the dossier, we see in the department chair letters or promotion committee letters, not infrequently actual quotes
Yes,
from those
exactly.
evaluations. And it gives so much more depth to the teaching, advising, and mentoring excellence. It's really very, very good to see. So great advice. Alex, from your perspective, what's your tip?
My tip is to be thinking about the audience who's going to be reviewing your dossier. So again, as we've highlighted, the varying backgrounds that people come to CMFA, and then also the higher levels of review that your dossier will ultimately go through. People won't necessarily, that review group won't necessarily know, say, all of the acronyms of the organizations that you are involved with, or the weight that one journal has against another. So make sure that you're utilizing both your personal statement, but also your connection and the explanation that you will probably be able to have with your department chair or division chief, and how they are able to frame your story in the narrative spaces within the dossier, because those people coming in from the outside, all of that explanation is going to be that much more additive and helpful in understanding your background and your story.
Great, excellent. So now I am going to ask Vilma Cortez Visayan to give us some questions for the panel.
Yes. So I have a two-part question for our first question, and I was brought in as a faculty, as a clinician educator, but now my effort is 100% research, clinical research, but research with external funding. Should I change tracks, and what are the benefits or changes associated with faculty promotion?
Great. I'm going to ask our panelists, anybody raise your real hand, not your virtual hand, if you want to take this. Otherwise, I'll assign it. Okay, Susan, you're great.
So read the definition of each of the tracks and see where do you fit the best. What's going to drive your passions, and if it's going to be research, then you need to have a conversation with your mentor and your either your chair or your promotion committee about doing a pre-select to go into an academic track. So those are, I think, what's the benefit of being in an academic track as opposed to a clinical track? It depends upon your department. There are some general university benefits that you're a voting member of the university in an academic track, and there are a few other smaller benefits, but also there may be different benefits in your individual department based on hours, or it's mostly an hourly difference in some departments. And then think about where your career is. If you're early in your career, is this the place you're going to, you think about the next step in your career, which we should always be thinking about, future oriented. are you going to be seeking an academic role further on? So those are the three things I think you need to think about.
Karen, you unmuted. Did you want to add in or no? Okay.
No, I agree. I agree with Susan.
Yeah, and it's and actually it's something that I'm happy to talk with you about specifically as well. Whoever asked that question, just to help you sort of see if that makes sense. But I think ultimately it is, you know, what are you doing and what will you get recognized and rewarded for based on the track you're in. So what's next, Vilma?
Are there any caps for the number of faculty that are approved for promotion each year?
Vilma, you're the one who schedules CMFA. You should answer that. Although Vilma's relatively new in the position, so I'm going to let Alex take that one.
I'll pinch it. So each year it's, you know, a slight ballpark, but there is a set number of slots that we have each year. But in the end, the entire time that I've been here at Brown, we have never had to ultimately at the end of the year turn anybody away. We do max out planning out and booking wise at about 100 slots per year. But with that, that doesn't account for, you know, while some people or some departments might be added to the schedule at the beginning part of the year, maybe, you know, there's a holdup or something isn't quite ready yet, and people, you know, for whatever reason come off of the schedule, and then we're actually then able to add others on. So each year we usually start out over the summer with a wait list, but as the course of the academic year goes, we by and large are always able to get anybody off of the wait list that needs to come off and get reviewed. So about 100.
Yeah, and we work really hard. If somebody, you know, if their dossier is all ready to go and we don't, you know, we squeeze them in. And worst case scenario, if somebody was ready to go in the, you know, academic year and we couldn't get to them, which, as I say, never happens, but we can actually review the dossier in the fall and then backdate the promotion to July 1st of that year, rather than waiting until July 1st of the next year. So we do everything we can to get everybody reviewed. That's Vilma's job. What's next, Vilma?
Is there a certain amount of years for each stage of promotion?
Great question. Anybody on our panel? Tracy, you unmuted first. This is like, you know, Jeopardy.
Right. Well, there's no set rule, but generally speaking, at least for the Department of Psychiatry, it's about 6 years. So what we do is when people come up for reappointment, we look carefully at their CV to see, you know, if they're on track, and if they have either an expressed interest in promotion, or if we determine that, wow, that this person is really headed in the direction where promotion makes a lot of sense, the person's service chief or the liaison that we identify in our meeting will reach out to that faculty member and say, hey, you know, we reviewed your CV as part of your reappointment and we're really impressed by, et cetera, and so forth. Like to, you know, plant the seed about promotion. So again, that's usually around year 6 or so for us.
Yeah, I would just add that if you are somebody who has been in rank for, you know, a number of years, way beyond 6, don't think that you shouldn't go up for promotion. In fact, we really encourage. Psychiatry is really great about reviewing people for promotion along the way, but some departments have a harder time because of the size to review everybody. So you might have, you know, sort of not done it at the time, and so, you know, don't feel bad if it's many years later. Vilma.
Can we get some examples of educational leadership and what teaching/service examples are?
Karen.
So educational leadership could be that you are organizing a course at the medical school. You're organizing, you know, let's say for an example, infectious disease, the course for the medical students, or maybe you're organizing a course at another university. So really showing that you're in leadership roles for that educational purpose. And then teaching and service, like that's, so service, I think that sometimes, we look at clinical service. Are you in charge of a clinical program at the hospital? Are you in charge of reading PFTs, or, are you in charge of the echo lab? I don't things like that. So, so that would be more service. And teaching also can mean, are you a program director? Are you directing, or an associate program director, maybe in line for the program director position? So taking, leadership roles, essentially.
Yeah, and I would just add that service can also include departmental committees or Brown University committees. So if you're on the admissions committee at the medical school, that counts towards service. So that it's important. A lot of people think that the 102-hour requirements are just teaching. So, doing courses or precepting, but it also includes that other departmental or university medical school service that you can do. Great.
Can you talk up? Oh, sorry.
I
Yeah,
was
go
just
ahead.
gonna say, just think about it as a trajectory, though. So, you go from usually direct teaching beyond the teaching that we all do, every day in our clinical practice, but doing doctoring, teaching, giving lectures, doing a course, that work. And then as you go along your career, you then take on educational leadership roles to disseminate education.
I guess another one would be precepting. You're precepting the fellows or precepting the residents. That's kind of maybe a beginning stage.
Right. Or in psychology, it's supervision, right, Tracy? Yeah. All right. Vilma.
Can you talk about whether board certifications ABPP is looked at favorably for promotions from clinical assistant to associate rank?
Sure. So that would be for psychology. It certainly is. And it's a tremendous amount of work. And I think, again, for the board certification, it reflects the fact that you're being evaluated essentially by a national panel of peers in terms of whether or not you meet that criteria. So, it's not necessarily listed as one of the criteria for promotion, but it certainly doesn't hurt and definitely helps. And perhaps importantly, that's one of the examples of where if you're trying to identify external letter writers, right, referees, thinking about your experiences on those boards, not necessarily people who evaluated you, but people you might have met along the way who are board certified, who may be at the full professor level or associate professor level, who could be an external letter writer for you. So from that perspective, I think it can be very helpful to make those connections and to get board certified. That would be my 2 cents about it.
Vilma, back to you.
Can you address whether waiting a long time to go up for a promotion is looked on unfavorably?
I can take that really easily. No, we sometimes ask, like, oh my gosh, why didn't this person come up before? Because they were qualified, they met the requirements, 10 years ago. But the committee always is just curious as to why. And we understand that people have really busy lives, and sometimes promotion is not their major priority at that time of their life. So we're just happy that they came before us for promotion at some point. That was just an easy one, so I don't need to bother the panelists with that one.
I think we have 2 more questions. The first one is there an option for reaching out to a committee representative for a pre-screen the application and improve it before submission? And if there's any suggestions on how to find a mentor in the path of moving towards promotion?
I
Susan.
can answer
Yeah.
that. The pre-screen is usually done in your department by a member of the promotion committee or a mentor. If there hasn't been someone identified, then I think it would be reasonable to ask if there is a person in the department who could help you and pre-screen. The other thing is to, as the advice came already, use someone who's already gotten promoted recently and talk to them about peer mentoring is great. How did they do it? Can you look at their CVs, share ideas, share thoughts, share resources? And then as far as mentoring goes, I think they're actually evolving new resources for mentoring. Kathy Mason is come into academic affairs within and will help. You can reach out to any of us. You could reach out to me and I might not know, but I would help find you a mentor. So I think there are a lot of people who would help you identify a mentor. This is a very inclusive community.
And sometimes it's helpful even to have somebody outside of your department. And I know that some departments do have mentoring programs and match faculty with mentors. Many do not. But as Susan said, if you have questions about it, I'm sure any of us would be more than happy to help. But you can also start with somebody, colleagues. Again, it's sort of like ask colleagues, who they might suggest would be a good match for you as a mentor.
For Brown CV format, can we delete sections that do not apply to us? And can we do things out of order? For example, if we are an assistant professor, does it make sense to accept a national and international speaking invitation? Will it count for later? Will it count later for a next stage?
Just say yes is my answer. I see all the panelists are going, yes, 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 yes. If you get asked to, even though it's only a regional, reputation requirement at the associate professor rank, if you have an opportunity to do a national or international and leapfrog over regional, like go for it. So yes, I any other thoughts about that? I just had to, I just saw everybody nodding their head. Oh, and then the other part of the question was, can you delete sections of your CV if they don't apply to you? Alex, do you want to take that one? You've seen all the CVs from all the various.
I have. Yep. And quick answer to that one as well. Yes.
Yeah.
You use what applies to you. And if you don't have anything for a section, it is fine to remove that.
And we're getting questions already about where to put your DEI activities on your CV. Do you include it as a separate section? Do you integrate it into the various, clinical teaching research that you're doing? We don't have any specific recommendation. I think it's whatever makes sense for the kind of work you're doing. And so far, we've seen all iterations of that, right, Alex? I mean, in terms of how people incorporate it into their CV, include it in their personal statement. So I think the message is just make sure that you get credit for the work you do. All right, so we're at hour. So should any more quick
We have
questions?
one more if we
Okay.
have time.
Okay.
If you started the process and you win an award, can you update your dossier?
Susan, Karen, anybody?
Yes, yes.
Yes. Yes.
Yes, and I think, you can put it into your CV in maybe in a way that we can see that this is new, or, or talk to your departmental administrator who's helping you with the promotions process in order to know how to put it in there, but definitely you can update it.
Yeah, and we see CVs all the time that have additions, publications, presentations, awards highlighted, so that we know that they were subsequent to maybe even the promotion committee review, and so they add on, but absolutely include them. So we are past hour. I want to thank all of our panelists for sharing all the work that you do day in and day out to help faculty get promoted, and also for sharing your expertise today. So thanks so much. And thank you to our participants for your excellent, excellent questions. So now we are at the end of our first hour. We're going to move on to the breakout sessions that are going to be facilitated by our faculty. The clinical track breakout session will be facilitated by Keith Callahan, wave Keith, and Gary Bubley, who I see somewhere. Wave Gary. Okay, there he is. Okay, great. And then our clinician educator track session will be facilitated by Linda Nietzsche, okay, and Stephen Murnoff. Great. So again, go into select your breakout room, and if you're unsure, just hang out here in the main room and we will find you a place to go. Thanks, everybody. Good night.